Hi. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the second episode of Soft Serve, where your host, Kim,
Drake.
yes,
And Jed.
yeah. And today is a Jedisode, a Jet episode. It's the
Woo!
second episode and it's a Jedisode. So what do you have for
Jedisodes
us
for
today?
Jedical Cats.
Yes.
So at the time that we're recording this, the thing that's in the zeitgeist is Mulan. Is Disney's 2020 live-action Mulan, which is a remake of their beloved 1998 animated film, and this is a movie that generally has a positive critical reception, but among all our friends and pretty much the entire Chinese diaspora all around the world, everybody hates this movie.
We hate it.
Yeah, it's a controversial movie where people have issues with the movie as a movie, but then there are also additional contextual things that have popped up about it, which are at the very least troubling. And we're going to talk about the very many layers surrounding the movie, kind of the layers of mess and even stuff surrounding its release, the circumstances surrounding its release. So we're going to try and look at it from a bunch of angles because I think we've all already read various takes and we've read like various properly considered scholarly takes. We've also seen snarky takes. We've seen purely angry takes. So we're going to try and find the middle ground of all of those takes and take 2020 Mulan apart with the disclaimer that I think of the three of us, only I have seen it.
Yeah. And
So-
I've been so entertained by the backlash and like
Yeah, by
just
the takes.
from the brief clips I've seen of it, there is just this one scene where like Mulan kicks an arrow into somebody's chest. It's very bizarre. So I don't know. So you're gonna have to hold our hands and guide us through this one, Jen.
Yes, what an auspicious inaugural Jedisode.
I
So-
haven't actually heard. I haven't like paid attention to most of it actually.
To the takes, yeah, that'll be fun then
Yeah.
to kind of like.
I'm coming.
Then you can have like an unbiased kind of third party view.
I'm coming in with a fresh view.
Mm-hmm.
I am a jury of a
Okay.
of a
I
court
just found this out, but the actress who plays Mulan in this one, she was in this adaptation of Condor Heroes,
Condor Heroes,
the one
yeah.
that was on Channel U for like the longest time.
case. Never heard of it.
So
Yeah, Liu Yifei, who is also
Xiao
known
Long
as
Li.
Crystal Liu.
I've never heard of it.
So
you've
not
never
Xiao Long
watched
Bao.
Condor Heroes.
Yeah, I've never heard of
Xiao
This is
Common
Long.
Heroes.
our first hacky joke.
Okay, let's move past that.
Let's move past that. Yes. Okay.
So
All
yeah.
right, so I think where I want to start before we talk about Mulan is Berlin, Drake. Where do you fall on the current spate of live action Disney remakes?
I can't think of anyone that I've liked. That's why I don't really
Mhm.
care about Mulan because it's like I don't think I'll enjoy it, so I never really bothered.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I think it can be done properly. I just don't think that it has been done, and I don't think that they will because they make enough money. It doesn't really matter to them, and like just come up with a new movie lah, please. Yeah.
And you, Berlin?
No,
Yeah, okay, so
I
I think...
hate it. Oh my god.
Alright, so there are a few that I think are really, really good. I love Jungle Book. I love Pete's Dragon. I think Pete's Dragon is super underrated. Pete's Dragon, to me, like, it really adds to the story. It recontextualizes and changes the setting of the story, but the main thing about Pete's Dragon is the relationship between the boy and the dragon that is preserved and kind of expounded upon. I highly recommend Pete's Dragon. It sounds like nobody watched it when it came out in 2016 because it's never really mentioned with all the rest of these remakes. But yeah, of the vast majority of them, I find a bit disappointing because I have an attachment to the stage musical adaptations, like the stage musical version of Beauty and the Beast, stage musical version of Lion King. So it's like stage musical version of Aladdin even. So there already exists like what I think of as a live action version of these movies, and I know that stage and screen are different mediums, but to me it's very frustrating when it's like, why are you leaving out all of the songs that were written, the additional songs that were written for the stage version when they're already there? why are we doing this? And especially with Lion King, it was like, why?
Was there no singing in
who
Lion
is this
King?
really for? Right? There's like, sorry.
There was singing in the
Yeah,
live
there was.
action
In
adaptation.
the photorealistic CGI Lion King, because we're splitting hairs, you're splitting first simulation hairs. But it was really funny because the whole conversation was, is this live action? Is this not live action? Because Disney wanted to treat it as live action, but clearly nothing in it was shot for real, right? It was all computer generated, which is very, very impressive. It just doesn't really serve that particular story to me. So yeah, this leads us to Mulan. And to me, the question is, when we have a live action remake, is there room to improve things? Is there room to change things? And I feel like with Mulan, they were adopting perhaps a superficially similar approach to Jungle Book, where it was like, we're going to change the genre a bit. The animated Jungle Book was like a variety show. These characters came up, sang a song, and left, and they changed it into an action adventure. So with this one, we're going from a musical to like an wuxia movie. So that was the mode that they started out with. And I don't think that's the worst starting point ever, but I guess we ended up with something that pleases nobody, right? Because this movie is too different from the 1998 animated movie that is directly based on to satisfy fans of that, no songs, no Mushu, etc. But it's also not close enough to the accepted tellings of the legend, the Ballad of Mulan, that it would please people looking for more authenticity. So it's in this very awkward no man's land. Pun intended.
Why do we need a Hollywood wuxia movie when we have Wendy Wu Homecoming Queen? Has anybody watched
Wendy
that?
Wu Homecoming Warrior, yeah, fantastic. What a good time.
That was so good.
Yeah, I think like we are at a point where the question is who gets to tell whose stories, right? And to me, honestly, I didn't hate this movie. I think this movie is okay. I think it's fine. I gave it, ultimately, I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. Like, it's mediocre, edging towards slightly above average. But I understand why people are upset with this. And I think as Asian audiences, as Chinese audiences, we are used to a certain way of these movies being made. And when Hollywood does it, no matter how well it's done, which in this case it isn't even done all that well, it can't help but feel like a very hollow facsimile, like a pastiche. Like it's trying to copy something that is done better by people who know what they're doing. But on the other hand, I really think this could be a gateway. I feel like this could perhaps interest audiences who are not familiar with wuxia movies and make them seek out what actual wuxia movies and TV shows are like. So to be very, very optimistic, I think that is the possible function that this serves.
Okay. Just, when you said wuxia movie, my first thought was just leave this kind of thing to like the Chinese people. Don't dabble in things you don't understand. You're not ready for it.
Because you have people like you got like all the like Seven Swords. You have Red Cliff, all that kind of like just these grandiose sequences of sword fights and just pyrotechnics, arrows flying down, color coded. Chinese ropes ripping through the wind, and each enemy is a different color. It's all very like, very like beautiful and almost like supernatural to look at. And they usually have a certain tone to their stories, which is quite serious and adult and melodramatic. So it felt like an odd choice for Disney to try and go down an wuxia route, because it just kind of like, tonally at least, kind of like it's really strange in comparison to just how serious and melodramatic and adult a lot of wuxia films are.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really kind of valid concern with Disney wading into this. And I guess the thing is that there exists so many Mulan movies in the past few weeks. I've just seen a lot of comparisons made to the 2009 Mulan movie directed by Jing Le Ma, which stars Vicky Zhao and Zhao Wei. And that is considered the good modern-ish live-action Mulan movie. But I guess the reason why a lot of people are attached and have a nostalgic attachment to Mulan is because that was the first time they'd seen a Disney princess look like them. And I think that there are people who feel the same way about Jasmine, and there are even people who feel the same way about Pocahontas, even though Pocahontas is a deeply kind of like problematic take on that historical story. And I guess the question is how much leeway is there, right? Because Mulan, the Ballad of Mulan, is very much it's a folk story, but it is rooted in a specific historical time. And apparently, the production designer of this movie, Grant Major, he said that the Chinese government had issued certain mandates to Disney to instruct them not to set the movie in a specific period or in a specific location. So you have all sorts of weird kind of mashup stuff where generally it feels like it's set in the Tang Dynasty, but Mulan lives in a Hakka Tulo kind of house, you know? So it's all of these things which, if you are familiar with that culture, it will feel very discordant to you. But the thing that I've always been saying is I'm trying to hold this to the same historical rigor that I hold the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but Pirates of the Caribbean is not based on a 1,500-year-old epic poem that is beloved by a generation.
And I remember people having the same kind of issue with like Moana, where some people said that there was like a sort of mishmash of different cultures from the Polynesian islands, so it got a little bit confusing, and some people did wish that they were more specific in that, but I think they might have had more input, and we'll get into this, right? The people who wrote Mulan 2020, they had more input from people who are actually from that culture in Moana compared to what we have here.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think Disney, what is weird about this movie is that Disney kind of prides themselves on doing their cultural research, on going to the countries that they draw inspiration from for the movies and for meeting with different experts, for meeting with anthropologists, like cultural dance choreographers, linguists, even experts in culinary experts. So they did a lot of that kind of research for Moana. And like you said, even then there were issues with the mishmash kind of nature of the Polynesian cultures that were reflected. And they even did this with Frozen 2. Because in Frozen 2 there is a tribe called the Northaldrons, and they are analogous to the real-life Northern Sami people who live in the Scandinavian countries, right? Iceland, Finland, places like that. And Disney made a contract with the tribal leaders of the Sami people to promise that they would be portrayed respectfully in the film. So to me, that's what is baffling about this movie. It's like, surely they had people telling them what they were doing would ring weird and would kind of be inauthentic to people who are familiar with the culture. And the thing is that there are not very few Chinese people in the world. There are lots and lots and lots of Chinese people in the world. So
a lot of
feel
Chinese people in like the Western Hemisphere as well.
Yeah, there are a lot of Chinese people who would have grown up with Disney stuff, but also would have a familiarity with their own culture and traditions, and would be able to kind of come in and point everything, which several people have on Twitter and elsewhere. Walter Chaw, the film critic from Film Freak Central, he wrote a great, like, really exhausted, exasperated piece. And not to skip to the ending here, but he had a great line in there about saying that hiring Asian consultants isn't going to cut it. It has to be people to whom that culture matters, who are making the key creative decisions. And that was something that was missing from this film. Yeah, so I think, like, the issue very much is who is this for and who has the right to make it. So we've alluded to it a bit earlier, but the movie's director, Nikki Caro, she is a white woman. She's a New Zealander filmmaker. But and to me, honestly, I think it is very impressive that she is one of the very, very few women directors who has made a movie that's cost above $100 million. And she's in this, like, very exclusive small club together with Patty Jenkins and Wonder Woman, Ava DuVernay, Wrinkle in Time. But then at the same time, it was like Disney at first was going after Li Ang, who I think opted to do Billy Lynn's Long Half-Time Walk, and then Gemini Man after this. And I think there's no question that this would have been better with Li Ang at the helm, but to me, I think it's even more of a problem that the writers were not Chinese.
Yeah.
Because even the 1998 animated film had one co-screenwriter, Rita Xiao, who was of Chinese descent. And in this case, it's Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver who did Rise of Planet of the Apes, and they are co-credited with Elizabeth Martin and Lauren Hynek. So I want to do a bit of a detour because the script, right, the Elizabeth Martin and Lauren Hynek script that Disney bought originally was very controversial because it had as its main character a white guy, a merchant.
Wait, sorry, come again?
The Mulan script? Wait, what?
Yes. So there was the the movie is credited to the four screenwriters, right? Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver, and then Elizabeth Martin and Lauren Hynek. So the Elizabeth Martin and Lauren Hynek script, the initial script that Disney bought, had at its main character a white merchant, a European merchant who falls in love with Mulan.
What the fuck?
So that like leaked out.
I hate it.
And so the thing to me was like I was very sure that they weren't going to make that script. And they didn't. But enough of that script remained that Lauren Hynek and Elizabeth Martin are credited as screenwriters rather than story by. So let me kind of get into the weeds a little bit, right? When you watch a movie and you get to the credits at the end and it says screenplay by so and so, and then it says story by somebody else, it doesn't mean that other person wrote the idea. It means that other person wrote a rejected draft of the script. So this is how it goes, all right? Like Spider-Man Homecoming had 3 pairs of credited screenwriters. So it was like X and Y and A and B and C and D. So that means that X and Y wrote together, but they wrote separately from C and D and from A and B. So the credits, it gets very, very granular, and in fact there are a lot of arbitrations, there are a lot of kind of like lawsuits and legal battles over who wrote what. But in this case, what I'm saying is that it looks like there was enough of that original white merchant script that made it into that finished result.
Ew.
Right?
When TFW, when somebody doesn't, like, they contribute to the project at an earlier stage and then you have to edit everything out because it's bad, but they still want to be credited.
I think that was very much what was going on with Elizabeth Martin and Lauren Hynek. And look, I don't think Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver are bad screenwriters. Like, I love Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I think that's a really good movie, and I think they did an early draft of Jurassic World as well. But I think it's very important to have somebody in the room who would know what feels awkward. And to me, it's like the level of suspension of disbelief with this movie. It is not just, oh, I accept that there's magic. I accept that Gong Li can turn into a hawk because she's a shape-shifting sorceress. But there are a lot of base kind of misunderstandings of Chinese cultural symbols and motifs. We'll get into some of them here. So, what have you heard?
I wanted to bring up that I just realized that Nikki Caro directed Whale Rider.
Yeah, Oscar nominated for Whale Rider, right?
Which was like a formative experience for me, right? I really loved the book.
I didn't know that. I didn't know you watched the movie.
I studied Whale Rider like in Sec 1, and it's really strange because though I'm not familiar, I can't really say because I'm not as familiar with this culture, but they seem very insistent on everything being very respectful to this particular culture that Whale Rider's from.
Like Maori descent?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not Keisha Castle Hughes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's the thing that is kind of like frustrating, is because her filmography, the other movie that I watched of hers was The Zookeeper's Wife. And this was a Holocaust drama. It was about a real life Polish couple who ran a zoo and sheltered Jewish people in the basement of that zoo when the Germans commandeered the zoo and kind of like captured the animals and killed a lot of the animals. So that was like okay. It wasn't brilliant, but to me it was a very solid kind of example of that type of movie. Great performance from Jessica Chastain. So like she announced up front that she wanted to make what she called like a girly martial arts movie, like a martial arts girl power movie. And she talked about cutting Mushu because they wanted realism. But I don't know if realism is the right word, right? Because you still have magical powers, you have people running up
Gong Li
walls.
turning into a hawk.
Gong Li turning into a hawk is a thing that happens a lot in the movie. So to me, it was, they tried to align themselves with, this is more authentic. But the question is, authentic to what? And I think that's the main question that is plaguing Mulan. What is it authentic to when you say you're being authentic? Because it isn't being authentic to the 1998 movie, and it's just not being authentic to the legend, the Ballad of Mulan. Mm-hmm. So I think, even when I say all of this, honestly, like, I didn't mind the movie, but my opinion on it has definitely shifted after learning about some of the surrounding context. Kim, do you want to lead us into this?
Well,
yeah, deep breath, guys. This gets dark.
So, I see a point here. It's called assorted Chinese government fuckery. The movie, parts of it were being filmed in Xinjiang, and that Xinjiang local government was acknowledged in the credits of the movie. And if, well, you've been on social media for like the past few years, you would know that this is where China's essentially running a sort of concentration camp for their Uyghur minority. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's about 1 million people are being held in what are referred to euphemistically as re-education camps. And so this is a place that was a filming location for the film. And also the Xinjiang publicity department was thanked in the credits. And it's, yeah, so this is like really, really distressing and gross because, like, you know, we've said this so many times, no ethical consumption under capitalism, etc. But this feels like an error that could have been
especially
avoided.
Egregious.
Yes, and the movie was filmed mostly really in New Zealand, which is where Nikki Caro is from. So to me, it's like, what scenery could you not find in New Zealand that Xinjiang had to provide? Because I understand filming in the other parts of China. They also filmed in Hengdian City, which is there's basically a standing set of a Tang Dynasty imperial palace that is there on a lot in China that everything films at. So I understand that they had to go and film there for the imperial palace scenes. But what did you have to go and film in the area where the concentration camps are that you couldn't film elsewhere in China or New Zealand?
Yeah, earlier when you said like the Chinese government sent over like a memo or something telling them not to include stuff, like not to put it in this context of the time period or whatever. I was gonna say that bothered me, that Disney just complied. But now I understand.
Yeah, I think
we see
Disney
what's
complied
happening.
because Disney complied because they wanted money, and I think like I watched a documentary where they talked about it's a documentary about the history of Disneyland, and they talked about all the hoops that Disney had to jump through in order to get Shanghai Disneyland off the ground, and all the things they had to comply with. And there's actually like scenes of a meeting between Bob Iger and Xi Jinping.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and Xi Jinping's father, who was also a high-ranking official in the Chinese Communist Party, he visited Disneyland in the 80s, and so Bob Iger like unearthed a photograph of Xi Jinping's father shaking hands with Mickey Mouse and gave that photo to Xi Jinping, and it's like very dystopian to watch that. So to me, the question is like, there's a representation of Chinese culture in Hollywood film necessarily mean a partnership with the Chinese government? Honestly, I don't think so.
Yeah. Like, and another point I wanted to bring up, a bit like off tangent, it's like, because Disney has been on the progressive train. They've been trying to milk it, right? They've been trying to talk about, I'm going to give you guys representation. Okay, it's like two dudes dancing at the end of like Beauty and the Beast or whatever. So
yeah,
it feels...
two woman pilots kissing in the far background at the end of The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, so, like, okay, you've been trying to do that whole, I'm gonna become a progressive leader in the industry thing. All right, representation and all. And I know in the end, this is all kind of just like a marketing tactic. But if it makes some, like, I guess, like, far-right people really angry, then I don't mind that much, you know? But this just seems like such a blatant hypocrisy. Like, it would hurt you in the long term. Like, it's
very, very much so.
It goes against your entire branding. It's very bad for PR.
It doesn't tell us that they are in cahoots. I'll say cahoots. I hate that word. I don't know why I say cahoots. In collusion with the Chinese government, but at the very least, it tells us that they are complicit, and that bothers me very much.
Yeah, and I guess the ultimate irony of this is that people in China hate this movie. Like, this is a
Oh,
4.9 out of 10 on Topat. And one of the like top reviews says Westerners' understanding of Chinese stories is baffling, which, you know, is hard to argue with. Baffling is a good adjective here, but I think it's a very much a matter of like, you need to close an eye to certain things in order to advance your market share, which has always been the case with any corporation. Like, you go far enough down and there are human rights violations and abuses, and at the very, very least kind of mistreatment of workers, violation of workers' rights that happen with any major corporation. But the nakedness of like filming in the vicinity or in proximity to concentration camps, that is something that is very, very hard to close one eye to. Because I was telling Kim earlier that when we watch movies like King Kong or Wonder Woman and you see a logo for Tencent or Alibaba or whatever show up, like, you don't immediately make the connection that maybe there's some sort of untoward business that those companies are carrying out, because Lord knows that it's not just Chinese companies that do that. But then when there's something as explicit as thanking the publicity department of the Xinjiang, in the end credits, and you kind of realize, oh, what's in Xinjiang? The concentration camps are in Xinjiang. And I think a friend also pointed out that like they use 简体字, or they use the simplified Chinese script on all of the banners and insignia and stuff, and it would be historically inaccurate. But I think this is also because Hong Kong and Taiwan use 繁体字, they use traditional Chinese script, and so this is seen to ally itself with the mainland rather than with Hong Kong and Taiwan. That's my conspiracy theory there.
It's almost, and not to get too conspiratorial here. Okay, Kim is going into big brain mode.
Big brain.
I hate to say this, but it feels almost like a PR tactic. Like, oh no, I mean, Disney's still filming movies here. Can't possibly be a concentration camp here, is there? It's just a re-education center.
Right,
Nothing
there is no war in
sinister
Ba Sing
happening
Se
here.
kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly, and it's very gross. It's very creepy.
Like, it provides them with a cover.
Yeah.
It's not
I
at
think
all
that's a
surprising
stretch
to
at
think
all.
about.
Not even a cover, just like, hey, look, international businesses are still willing to deal with us. There's nothing wrong here. It's just a very simple, easy little business transaction, and then they throw a little, like, colorful little movie where Gong Li turns into an eagle on top of it.
I think the Chinese government definitely had that in mind, and I mean, they've been trying to bury the whole concentration camp thing for years.
Yeah, they've been trying to downplay it, and they've been trying to deny the veracity of leaked videos and testimony from people who were held in those camps.
And this is what makes Disney so much more complicit in this, is that they are allowing the Chinese government to push out that narrative that Kim just mentioned, that it's just giving them that voucher, giving them that pass to be like, Disney is working with us, we are doing fine. You know, the kind of bullcrap, and you know, it's very frustrating and angering.
I think that there's a lot of assorted fuckery that happens with really any movie production, and especially movie productions that film in international locations. So I'm not making this an equivalency. I'm not saying this is the same thing. But Sahara, which is a 2005 movie starring Matthew McConaughey and Penelope Cruz, it was a humongous flop, and therefore it became the subject of a heated lawsuit where the author of the books on which the movie was based, Clive Cussler, he sued the producer of the movie, and therefore the entire kind of inventory all came out. Like, their spending, everything was released to the public. And factoring into the budget of the film was money set aside to bribe officials in Morocco.
Oh.
Right? Yeah, so I think this happens so much more than we know it does, than we think it does. But with the situation in Xinjiang, like, it's just so much more egregious, and it kind of like almost is like yelling at you from the screen, this is a problem. So yeah, I'm not trying to normalize it, but I think it is normal. I think it is normal for there to be some funny business involved in any production of any movie, but
any
once
major production like this,
where especially when international locations are factored in, But once you kind of have that with this big Disney blockbuster that is kind of meant to be inoffensive and have mass appeal, I think it's very insidious, and we haven't even gotten into like Louis Fei's public support of the Hong Kong police, and also Donnie Yen's very much pro Chinese Communist Party statements. So, but at the same time, if you don't say this stuff about the Chinese government, if you don't publicly support them as a celebrity, bad things happen to you.
Yeah, what was it? Fan Bingbing? Was
Yeah.
it? She was basically almost like ousted from China. Like
Yeah, she
people
went from
wouldn't
being
give
the
her
number
any
one like top
deals.
grossing
Yeah.
Wow.
actress to basically going into exile.
I really I liked Fan Bingbing's performances.
Was
She's-
this because of like, because I heard that there was something to do with like she had committed fraud, but I don't know whether that has anything to do with this.
I do not remember any. I don't remember. Perhaps something to do with that, but I don't know. Like, I know that if you get in trouble with that that particular government, especially if like you're such like a huge public figure, it can really just like do a lot of damage to you. It can be quite scary.
Yeah, and I think even then the nationalism in Mulan is comparatively subtle when you look at all of the major Chinese action blockbusters that have come out in the past several years. When you look at movies like Wolf Warrior and Operation Red Sea, Operation Yemen, movies like there was this thing, they had one for Navy, they had one for the Air Force, and they even had this historical movie called The Climbers that I saw last year, which was about a Chinese expedition to climb Mount Everest, and it was released over Golden Week, which was the Chinese like National Day, and it was all about how the Chinese are claiming the mountain and it's China's mountain. No, Mount Everest is not China's mountain. So it was just like all of this stuff is very, very unsubtle when China actually does it, because they are using kind of the 80s American action movie model, and it's kind of funny that they're doing that, but it's like, yeah, it's very bombastic. It's like the later Rambos. I mean, the first Rambo is kind of this. It's about a veteran fighting against police brutality, but then the later Rambos is like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to Cambodia and shoot a bunch of people. So I think like there needs to be a place that we reach where we agree that representation doesn't have to have all of this baggage attached to it. Like, I think right now the argument that is being made in favor of this Mulan movie is, okay, so it has some problems, but aren't you happy to see an all Chinese cast and all East Asian cast on film though?
That feels like baiting a blackmail or something. It's kind of gross. We shouldn't have to compromise too much to get representation, please.
It's so like just
Yeah, I
like,
think that's
be
what
satisfied
everyone's
with these scraps.
Yeah, eat up, and I think I think people are becoming savvy to that and are rejecting that and are pushing back against it, because I guess to a smaller extent this is kind of what happened in Crazy Rich Asians as well, and Crazy Rich Asians was definitely hailed as a triumph for representation for Asian Americans, especially for Chinese Americans. But in Singapore, we know that the movie is not an accurate representation of Singapore, because the Singapore that we know, the makeup of Singapore's ethnic population does not reflect what is seen in the film. So it was disconcerting that the tourism board approved version of Singapore was pretty much devoid of brown people.
Yeah.
So that's a conversation for another day. But I think the Asian American population to which this was geared, they really, really liked Crazy Rich Asians. And it was viewed as a triumph for representation for them. But in this case, I think what we are realizing is that it's not enough that you have non-white people on screen. Like, the change and the impact really, really matters with the decisions made behind the camera. And especially in the boardroom, I think when you go all the way to the executive level, most people who are running the studios and controlling the finances of the studios still are old white people. And that is the main space where change needs to happen. Because it's a matter of like who decides what stories get told, who decides
like,
what to greenlight.
In the end, how much creative choice does an actor have? It depends on the director, right? But I imagine in such like a high stakes production, they give you a script, you can't really do much.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure, Zima, or Rosalind Chow or Donnie Yen, one of those people, I'm sure they knew that in the Chinese phoenix is not the same as the Western phoenix. The Feng Huang in Chinese mythology doesn't have that element of rising from the ashes that the Western conception of a phoenix has. Or that qi is not a
Is that what
superpower,
was shown?
qi is life force. And therefore,
Donnie Yen?
so in the
How
movie,
could you do that?
in the movie, qi is the force
I'm
from
so
Star
betrayed.
Wars.
You did Ip Man, Donnie Yen. You know what this is.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god.
So it's like, was there a space for any of them to tap Hikaru on the shoulder and say, no, actually, we don't do this? I don't know. And like you said, it really
I doubt
depends.
it.
Right? Yeah, like you said, Kim, it really depends on how open the director is to collaborating. But it kind of feels like the script was the script. And there isn't a lot of... It doesn't feel like a loose, improvised movie at all. It does feel very flat and very like kind of mandated. And like Jet Li is in there. Jet Li is in there as the emperor talking about rising from the ashes like the phoenix. Which is... it's a little bit awkward. It's not a deal breaker, I don't think. And I think they're kind of like granular, specific things where Mulan's younger sister calls her by her name and not Jie, right? Which is verboten. You don't do that. But yeah, and it's little cultural specificities that people will pick up on, but it's like there's a lot of stuff which can be excused when you frame it as this is a fantasy adventure movie that takes place in intimate time and intimate location, but then there's a lot of stuff which draws directly on Chinese culture that is, you're crossing a line here, you're talking out of your ass. So it's like how forgiving you are depends on where you draw that line, right?
And I wanted to add, I remember, I didn't watch Crazy Rich Asians myself, and I am not a mahjong person, but Drake is, and you watched, and Jet watched Crazy Rich Asians, I'm assuming. There was like a scene that I remember a lot of people were talking about, in which it was the mother-in-law and the
Michelle
daughter,
Yeoh
they were playing mahjong, and then the tiles actually kind of represented their emotional states at the time or something. So it's that kind of like small attention to detail that you would only have if you actually had someone from like that sort of background working on the story.
Yeah, I forgot the actual moves in the actual play, but it was like you had the tile that said east and the tile that said west, and it's kind of representing how the Rachel character was caught between the east and west. And Drake did.
I wasn't in that scene, so I don't remember. So I don't know. I never watched the movie either.
Drake was an extra on
I was
Rich Asians.
I was in the airport scene.
By the way.
Yeah,
and
just
the wedding
drop that
scene,
in.
So I didn't see any mahjong. I don't remember. I didn't watch the movie either, so.
Okay, so I've watched the movie, right? Yeah, and I think like here it is. The closest Western analog to mahjong might be Jin Rummy. Okay, so there's an explainer on Vox. Yeah, so when Eleanor arrives, right, she takes the open seat across from Rachel and is offered the role of dealer, the east seat. The 4 seats in mahjong are named after the compass directions, which plays an important role both in the rules of the game and the symbolism of the scene. Eleanor, in the role of east, representing Asia, is the play and control. Rachel, sitting across from her, represents America, the west. Early in the scene, Eleanor completes a pong, or match set of tiles. This move demonstrates that Eleanor plans to win using the strategy of matched tiles, and she's making Rachel aware. In this moment, Eleanor tells Rachel that her mother taught her how to play too. As the conversation continues, Rachel asks Eleanor why she didn't like her from the very beginning, even before her family history was revealed. Eleanor expounds on the difference between Asians and Asian Americans, noting how even though Asian Americans look Asian, they are American at heart. Referencing a Hokkien term that means our kind of people, she says that Asian Americans are not kakilang. Remember, in this game, Eleanor is trying to create a winning hand comprising all matches of the same exact tile, an extended family that's metaphorically composed of kakilang. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this was like my favorite scene in the movie, and I didn't even know all of the symbolism, but my mom kind of picked up on it and explained to me about like the east and the west thing. And yeah, it's there's the idea is the mechanics of the game reflect the symbolism of the story. So you would only really get that from someone who understood the game as and its cultural significance and was able to incorporate that into the scene. And Crazy Rich Asians is directed by a Chinese American person, directed by John M. Chu, and it is co-written by Adele Lim, who is a Chinese Malaysian writer, and she's working on Raya and the Last Dragon for Disney. So the thing is, like, that helps. Like, even then, Crazy Rich Asians had issues, but it would have a lot more issues if it were a white director.
Yeah.
And only white writers, right? And we're not saying this as to say that white people don't know anything, but it's just that in this specific case, it does seem a bit hubristic to not bring in somebody with that cultural background when I'm sure they are not hard to find in Hollywood.
Yeah, like, would I trust myself to, if I was hypothetically a director, would I trust myself to have that kind of knowledge and experience to direct a movie, let's say, set in the Irish Troubles,
Irish potato famine,
or about like anything that happened, something like that, or like would I be confident in making a movie about Canada and the period of time when they tried to negotiate with the British to let them go? And no, I would have to get like people from Canada or from Ireland to work with me.
No, I kind of want to see a movie
So
directed
it
by
doesn't
Kim
make
about that
sense.
particular thing.
Right. Yeah, and I think like it's very much the extent to which how much can you cover your ass by saying this is a fantasy movie, and I don't think you really can, right?
No.
Because this is based on a story that has that much cultural significance. So yeah, this is, I think, a lot of the dialogue surrounding this movie. There hasn't been a lot of nuance because I understand this is something that makes tempers flat. It makes people upset, and I also understand the point of view where I'm not happy because Eddie Murphy is on the talking dragon in it. That's kind of valid as well. But yeah, we wanted to kind of get into all of the different facets of why people have problems with this movie and the ways in which said problems are valid. And I think like it's a case where how much this affects you and how much this bothers you will very much depend on your background. Like, I'm surprised that it has, I think, like an 81% Rotten Tomatoes score.
How many of those are white people?
75 now.
Oh, 75. Okay, it's dropped. It's dropped.
Yeah,
All right.
it's dropping.
Mostly, I would wager, or just like non-Chinese diaspora people.
Just now, right, you mentioned something. Who is this movie being authentic to? And I have my own theory on that, but you finish it off first. What were you gonna say first?
Oh, no. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
the trailer for Dune just dropped. And I've been stewing about it the whole day, and like, okay, I know Jed might get irritated at this kind of, so like, modern movie canon is very desaturated, it's very decontextualized. It's just about like graphics, right? A lot of visual spectacle put into it. And I think Mulan is trying to be authentic to this canon, this sort of canon that is kind of just rooted in this barrage of desaturated remakes that we've been seeing these few years. I would say the live action Disney canon. That's what it's trying to be authentic to, not the original movie, but this lineup of movies that we currently have.
Yeah, and I think like I guess the weird thing is that a lot of these Disney live action remakes, I mean, especially like I guess if Aladdin with this one, they did try to make it really colorful, and I think the colorful nature of this Mulan, it makes it look like a theme park. It makes it look like Epcot, because when you go into the Tulo, into her house, and you sort of see how colorful everything is and how bright all the colors are, and especially I think the colors of the makeup and the clothes in the matchmaker scene, like a lot of this, the Disneyfication of it waters it down in a weird way. But yeah, I mean, I get what Kim is saying, and Kim was saying that with Dune, she was expecting everything to look like Moebius designed it. And Moebius was involved in like an earlier version of Dune that didn't make it to the big screen, but he did like illustrate comic books that were based on the Dune stories.
Okay, maybe not so much specifically the color, but more of like this sense of magic and wonderment is kind of gone, you know?
Right, like kind of the edges are filed off, and it's become the serial numbers are filed off, where it's just everything is like really corporate. Yeah, I guess like that's a valid argument against a lot of the Disney live action remakes, because the Disney live action remakes fundamentally exist because they fundamentally exist on the level of you like this thing, right? Here is something that is like this thing. It's similar to the thing you like. Here it is. So I guess that within that framework, there still is room for invention, there's room for creativity, and there's room for artistic integrity even. I go back to Pete's Dragon, I think that did that very well. But it is by its... Yeah, I like Maleficent. I even like the second Maleficent. A lot of people hate the second one. I really like the second Maleficent. She has a great outfit towards the end that looks like streaks of paint on her, and it's very dramatic and is a great kind of complement to the battle scene. But yeah, it's so... That's the thing. I guess the minefield is when Disney, the more beloved the movies that are remade are, the higher standard they'll be held to. So the question is, why is Disney not out here remaking Black Cauldron and remaking even Treasure Planet or Atlantis, because those are a bit more niche? But then there's the catch-22 of those movies don't have the recognition that Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, now Mulan have. So therefore it puts them kind of in a bind, right? Where it's like, I guess we have to make this. And the question is, are audiences going to say, I guess I have to buy it? And in this case, it's kind of no.
Yeah.
Even though it did do very well in Singapore theatres. If you go to the GV website and you read Singapore moviegoers' reviews of Mulan, they're largely...
We need to raise our standards a bit.
Oh no.
Just...
I'm gonna... Yeah, we do.
But yeah, I think I'm still coming down on it's not that bad, but definitely all of the context surrounding this is very worth thinking about. And it's very worth considering what happens going forward, because there is every chance that Disney and major studios will look at a movie like this and say, okay, a large-scale action-adventure movie, $200 million, starring an entirely Asian cast, flopped at the box office, therefore they'll stop making these. Because that's what happened when Catwoman came out in 2004 and Elektra came out in 2005, and after that, Hollywood collectively decided not to make female-led superheroine movies until Wonder Woman in 2017, because they decided
the problem was they sucked at making those movies,
women, which was not the problem with those movies. The problem is that those movies were not good. Yeah, the problem is that Catwoman was not a good movie and Elektra was not a good movie. It's not that they were women. So I think that is the danger here, that the wrong lessons will be learned, because Hollywood always learns the wrong lessons. But at the same time, I think it's also very important to recognize that not whitewashing is not enough. That's such a low standard. Like, there was a joke where Scarlett Johansson is going to be Mulan. Like, not happening is not enough. So I think that that is the reckoning fun word, which is growing around this movie.
Yeah. Someone commented on the GV website, why can't Gong Li's character just take over the Jet Li Emperor's body and win? Game over, haha. Anyways, nice movie. A bit weird watching them talk in English.
What?
Hua becomes a mouthful of words.
So yeah, I don't. I want to do another episode all about kind of like Singaporean moviegoers' opinions on things.
Aww.
Very nice show.
That's cute.
Children enjoy a lot.
Yeah, a lot of it is that, right? Yeah. Yeah, because I had like a Sunday school teacher of mine, and he is a comic book artist, and he asked me today, like, should I bring my daughter to watch Mulan? And I told him all of the things that everyone has said about it. And I told him about like my comparison to Pirates of the Caribbean. I gave it 6.5 out of 10, and it's like, oh, maybe not. But and yeah, this is a case where it really matters what background you have when you're watching this, because it's weird to see these characters talk in English because we're used to watching similar shows in Chinese. But imagine if to use the earlier Nikki Caro movie, if a Polish person watched a Zookeeper's Wife and everyone is speaking in English, that would be weird to them. But it's not weird to us because we don't watch a lot of Polish TV and movies. So I think that's definitely one of the differences in one of the places where like the foot that you start off on matters. Because it is very weird to watch everyone speak English, but it's not weird to Americans to watch that. And so it's like once the movie starts off with that amount of inauthenticity built into it, all the smaller ways in which it's inauthentic will have more impact, and that's what's going on.
Off topic, I just remembered something that people are also in a bind about.
Oh.
the Singapore grip.
That's the British perspective,
Yeah.
like the British family perspective in Singapore during the Japanese invasion.
Yeah, it's an ITV drama, historical drama based on a satirical novel that is about the fall of Singapore from the point of view of like a colonial British family, and there has been a lot of criticism that there's only one kind of like main Chinese character, and then there aren't even any Malay or
Of
any
course there
characters
isn't.
in a film that's set in at the time, Malay. Yeah,
Of course there isn't. And every time she comes on screen, there's like a hoof playing in the background.
because
so
she's like the seductive, mysterious, exotic woman, and she's also played by Elizabeth Tan, who
Chinese,
is a British Chinese
yeah.
actress, and that means that there are no like Singaporean actors in it. Yeah, which is not like even Serangoon Road like did better in that regard, and Serangoon Road is not like especially beloved, but I thought it was I thought it was like kind of a step in the right direction where they were sharing the lead role. There was one main Chinese actor, Joan Chen. Joan Chen was kind of the main Chinese character, and then Don Haney was the main Australian character, and then the rest of the supporting characters were played by Singaporean actors like Edmund Chen, like Alaric, like Chin Han, and then they had I think Ariel Bayu from Indonesia. He was in it as well. So that was also like a post World War II period piece set in Singapore. But the defense of the producers of Singapore Grip is, but this is a critical movie. It's a movie that's critical of colonization, though.
So between the two, which one's more distasteful? Xinjiang aside.
Xinjiang aside. No, I think, if we are approaching it on a very superficial level, Mulan is a story based on Chinese mythology and Chinese culture that has an all-Chinese cast. The Singapore Grip is a TV series set in Singapore. It is from the British perspective of the fall of Singapore, but there is like a conspicuous lack of local quote-unquote characters. So I think on the surface level, the Singapore Grip is more egregious, but it stands to reason that there possibly is more nuance in the show. I mean, the show's not out yet, so we also can't say either way. But yeah, I think like the Singapore Grip follows in a pattern of white people setting stories in other countries and then centering white people in them. But Mulan is more insidious because it's a movie that has an entirely East Asian cast, but that has only white people as the creative forces driving it. So that's different. Like, it doesn't look as bad, but it's different.
And also kind of like they're standing in for these characters that these white writers have made up based on, I guess, I heard some people say that they were very vague stereotypes, mystical and everything, and that made people uncomfortable.
In where? In
Mulan.
Yeah, I guess it's like they say honor a lot, which the original movie does as well. There's an entire song called "Honor to Us All" right in the original movie, and then it's the treatment of the witch character, played by Gong Li, where she says that she was outcast because she was a woman who used tea, and that's the reason why she was cast out on the tribe. And then she has a whole like "we're not so different, you and I" speech that she gives to Mulan, and tries to entice Mulan to join her and serve along her side. So to me, the thing is that Gong Li being a sorceress in the movie is not a very big deal because like there are characters like that.
We have sorceress characters.
But it's the witch hunt kind of framing which people are taking object to, saying that witch hunts are not a traditional Chinese thing. So I mean, I think a lot of the problem would have been solved if they didn't call her witch so much and they call her sorceress a bit more.
But the thing is, like, we have, if you just look at Journey to the West. Once again, I must bring up like Xiao Longyu. There's all sorts of fantastical, beautiful Chinese martial artist characters who have mystical powers, and that is sort of the fantasy, like these like really like cool women with like long billowing robes. And
we love witches. What are you talking about?
They whip their sleeves in people's faces.
Yeah, they whip their sleeves and We love witches. Like they're always like the good guys. They're the healer people. They have a little tribe in the mountain, and then they take care of you, and then they like take care of you for 16 years, and then you become part of them, and you're like some long lost daughter. Like there was no research put into this. This just doesn't connect at all.
Yeah, it was all like kind of white people framing, and I feel like the problem with Qi is that they felt the need to explain the appearance of waifu, because in America the main context of waifu, the main like reference point is the Matrix. So the idea is that people who fight like this, they have to have superpowers, right? Like that's not just how it looks like when people fight. Therefore, we have to create the explanation of the superpowers of the waifu and call it Qi. So to me, that was like, oh, okay, this is a very, very Western way of thinking. That you had to justify it with superpowers. And I think that very much takes away the element of Mulan being an ordinary girl who uses her wits and her determination to kind of pass as a man in the army and is self-sacrificial, because giving her superpowers undercuts that, right? She's not meant to be the Avatar. She's not Superman. So I think that was something that a lot of people were also very disappointed with.
I mean, for example, like in Bollywood movies, like I mentioned, I was talking to Jet earlier about Bahubali.
Yeah.
And there is this ridiculous scene where Devasena, okay, so Devasena is like this like warrior from a neighboring kingdom, and Bahubali is the main guy, and they basically do a dance, and they can like shoot like two different, like they have two bows, and then they shoot like 4 arrows in each bow at the same time, so altogether they have 4 bows, and they're like dancing while they're shooting enemies from all sides. And no, none of this is superpower. They're just that skilled.
Yeah, that's just what it looks like.
Yeah, that's just
so
how
you
it
suspend
is.
your disbelief and you kind of buy into the reality of the thing.
Because they're like they're like legends, right? And then they're what is sort of like passed down through the legends as the tale of how courageous these people are. But I guess like as a tradition, like the way that you could represent the skill in fighting and courageousness on screen would only just be through those like floaty sleeves and arrows like flying everywhere and hitting people extremely accurately. Though we know this doesn't happen in real life. Asians don't do this in real life. But we don't have to have
I
an
do when no one's
explanation.
looking.
we don't have to have an explanation about why they fight like this. This is just how it is in
Accepted,
this form
yeah.
of cinema. And I guess in maybe like I don't know, I haven't watched any recent like war like films, but I think like I have seen some movies which are considered wuxia, but the fighting is a lot more realistic. But I guess like it's it's always been an understandable stand-in, like to kind of communicate that extreme bravery and talent and power and all that.
Yeah, it just
no
looks
one
like
is
that.
activating any superpowers.
Yeah, no one is drawing upon their qi, right? And I guess
Yeah.
like and our friend like messaged me and said, if you don't have qi, you die. Qi is life force. I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, I mean to loop back around to the whole thing about the Uyghur concentration camps. I think like the number is closer to 2 million, the people who are held in those
Yeah.
camps. And yeah, so I'm pulling from a
Jesus.
Vox article here. It says some who've seen the film say it also promotes Han supremacism or Han chauvinism, Han supremacism. The idea that all parts of China, including native Uyghur and Kazakh lands, amongst others, should be governed and dominated by ethnic Han Chinese, the majority ethnic group in China. So there is a bunch of that where they sort of show the villains to be, oh, these are the savages. These like the northern savages. And they look a little bit darker
no.
than the Han Chinese. And I
I
guess
hate it.
the funny thing, to which it can be funny, is that Mulan was Xianbei, right? She was not Han Chinese in the original Ballad of Mulan.
Mulan was wait, what was that?
Xianbei, Xianbei. That was her ethnic group.
Interesting.
So yeah, so it's very much like conforming to an official narrative. And the more I find out about this movie, the more my stance of it's just kind of okay has evolved. But yeah, I think that's why it's worth it to discuss the implications of the movie and the context of the movie, but also do it in kind of like an even-handed, level-headed way, because I understand a lot of people are really, really angry and really upset about this, and their circumstances make them feel more that way than I do. But I'm also acknowledging that point of view. Okay, so like I'm looking through this Vox article, and it says last year Japanese clothing companies Muji and Uniqlo promoted their use of Xinjiang cotton. Made of organic cotton delicately and wholly handpicked in Xinjiang, the men's Oxford shirts of Muji are soft and breathable with a clean design, Muji's website read.
God.
Uniqlo's site also at the time boasted that its clothes were made from Xinjiang cotton, famous for its superb quality. Activists publicly shame both companies. What? They're actually using that as a slogan? Sophie Richardson, China Director for Human Rights Watch, told Australia's ABC last year. Have they somehow missed 2 straight years of news about gross human rights violations in Xinjiang? Now,
how many companies do I need to boycott? Oh my god.
We can put Disney in the elite section of companies caught in this firestorm. That's James Millward, Georgetown University World History professor. Yeah, he says there is clearly a cost now to companies who remain intentionally ignorant of what's going on in China.
How many companies do I need to boycott? Seriously?
Intentionally ignorant is such a phrase, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I know what's going on, blah, 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 blah. Stick your ears
I see, but I do not see.
Take your fingers in your ears. Yeah, because seeing would mean it's inconvenient for business. And, I mean, yeah, I guess, like... So, alright, I'm a Star Wars fan, and Star Wars fans can be very obnoxious about Disney. Like, a lot of Star Wars fans really hate Disney, and it's kind of a coded way of saying, oh, Disney has this badass thing that I love. But I think that Disney very much, it commits a lot of the same egregious kind of misconduct that many large corporations in other industries do as well. So this is not specifically a Disney is evil kind of problem. And I feel like that's where the narrative kind of needs to change, because there are a lot of people who view Disney as like an especially evil corporation. So, but it's like the hegemony, it's the amount of culture that they control, right? The amount of cultural capital that Disney wields. Like, all of our childhoods, Disney figured into that in some way or another. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where things are on this. If anything, I hope that this shows it's important to do a bit of research, to think a little bit about the surrounding context of things that you're consuming, and to be aware of the implications of it, because I feel a lot of us, we just want to watch our shows, right? We just want to... Nobody tell me what was wrong with this, who did what. I don't want to be my enjoyment of things to be policed. But in this case, I think we're seeing the value of thinking a little bit more than you otherwise might about something that is so fraught.
Oh my god.
She's still shaken about the Muji thing.
I'm like, I think like, I don't know how to phrase this properly at this point. I think I sent some of you an article about boba liberalism the other day, where the only kind of where it feels as if the only kind of freedom and progress we can make is by buying things and consuming things and watching things and getting representation in these just very like in these ways that, you know, can just be extrapolated to make money, and eventually we start to associate our watching and buying habits with a value.
Yeah, it puts the capital and cultural capital, right?
Yeah, so you start to associate all these things, and then in the end, they use something like a girl power narrative and representation to sell something to you that is actually covering up something that's really horrible and terrifying. The same thing with Muji and Uniqlo, right? And the Xinjiang cotton. The whole minimalistic aesthetic, like we're a clean company. We make choices easy for you. We're not like other brands. We're not like other movies. Buy us, because that will make you a good person. That will make you a certain kind of consumer, a discerning consumer. And in the end, you can't trust any of them.
Yeah, and I think like that's that's kind of frustrating, because at the same time it is very, very deflating to feel like, oh, the few things that I can find joy in, I'm no longer allowed to find joy in, because the leftists have declared themselves the joy police. So but it's a matter of like, I think where people can be responsible, they can practice that, and then where it's like kind of out of your hands, you don't have to worry about it if you're not inclined to. But then if you have an interest in figuring out why certain systemic problems exist and how they manifest themselves in what you consume and what you buy and what you use, then go and follow that instinct. So I think it's very much a case of the system is so entrenched that it is very hard to change. But there are certain,
it's very hard to avoid.
Yeah, it's very hard to not. How do you like live as not a capitalist, right? Like, if you're in Singapore, how can you decide I'm not going to pay money for
You can try
this?
all the things. You can try buying secondhand. You can research movies and where they were made until your eyes fall out of your sockets. But somewhere or another.
Yeah, like I mean, even like the Me Too stuff with Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey and all of that, like that. So that's so much a part of that culture that every movie is somehow touched by someone who had that kind of a history, or it doesn't even have to be sexual assault, but like other kinds of bending the rules, fudging things, like just like we were talking about the corruption with the bribing of officials in Morocco to make Sahara. So it's just, at the same time, I think this doesn't mean that we have a false equivalency where all quote-unquote transgressions carry the same weight.
It's like,
and I think it's easy to fall into that trap too.
It's like every industry that there is a big player who. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to find out how to phrase this. It's like every single industry, like there's somebody fucking it up. Like in the music industry, there's Dr. Luke, and then in the movie industry, there's, like you said, Harvey Weinstein, whatever. Who gives a fuck?
Weinstein, I think. Yeah. I think I mispronounced.
Whatever, fuck him. And then
never mind.
And then there's in the food industry, there's Nestle, and then it's like I feel like
Nestle owns everything. If you wanna like
Exactly.
boycott Nestle and you look at a list of everything they own, it's everything.
Yeah, I'm boycotting Nestle right now.
Just
and
don't
it's
drink.
everything.
Don't even drink water. It's just like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Milo is Nestle.
Milo is
Yeah.
Nestle. So it's
Yeah.
so like our system on everything feels just so completely broken.
Yeah, and I guess
and
like
here's-
it's wired that way. It's the people whom it profits and the people who benefit from it. That is entirely kind of by design.
Yeah.
So
So
it's
it's not
broken
broken.
for-
It's like it's
Yeah.
meant to be this way.
it's working.
Yeah.
It's working. The system is working perfectly fine to funnel money into the smallest amount of hands possible.
Yeah,
You know.
that's the capitalism. So yeah, when we said last week that the show that Soft Serve will contain horror of different kinds, will contain like existential horror, philosophical horror. Here's your dose of horror for today.
Yeah.
I think that brings us to pretty much all that we have got to say about Mulan. Any closing thoughts, Drake, Kim?
I want to
Closing
propose.
sighs. Sorry?
I want to propose
Yes.
a way to keep yourself sane.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit of a. I know it sounds like a little bit of a silly proposition. Make your own stuff sometimes to make to kind of just like, how do I put this? Kind of assure yourself that, you have some kind of effect on the world. Because you want to that it's tangible. You can I guess if I don't want to think too much about I don't know the ethics of finding yarn today, but if you knit a blanket, you made it with your own labor, it proves to you that you exist even in this kind of vast, very terrifying cosmos of neoliberalism.
Yeah, I think assert your own creativity, even if
Yeah.
it is a quote-unquote imperfect product, you know that it was something you made.
Assert that you exist. Cook food that you like. See friends that you like.
Yeah, and even like this show, this podcast, we know for sure that nobody got hurt making it. And
Yeah.
and so when I listen back to this one day, which I do, I listen back to the stuff that I'm involved in or that I make a lot, because I feel like, it was a journey for me, right, to kind of bring myself to a place where I'm proud of stuff that I've written, proud of stuff that I've recorded, because there is a big part of me that is still like, I cringe when I look at stuff that I've written, stuff that I've done. But I've come to a place where I accept that I can be proud of it.
That's nice, yeah.
And I really enjoy listening back to like snippets of myself on the radio or earlier podcasts and things that I've done, and feeling like, okay, I made a point here and I made that point well.
It's adorable.
Yeah.
That's why we soft.
I don't really have anything I can't really top that. I'm just gonna say fuck Nestle.
Yeah.
And so on, yeah. But at the same time, like, I think finally to nullify everything, like, if you like Mulan, if you like watching Mulan, that doesn't make you a bad person, but we just ask you to kind of consider the points that everyone else is making and acknowledge that and sort of take that into account, even as you say, I thought this movie was good, which a lot of people still do.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah.
And the uncle downstairs who's selling you drinks and gives you an iced Milo is not part of some
Vast
I don't
conspiracy
know.
of evil.
Yeah, conspiracy to help Nestle take over the world. People are just trying to live their lives in an unfortunately rather evil system, but we have to find our own way to make it through.
And of course not
Yeah,
everybody can just boycott such a big brand like Nestle, because they do engage in price fixing that makes competitors hard to keep up, and it makes their stuff kind of cheaper a bit, and like some people can only afford their stuff. And so like whenever I tell people to boycott, I always say, if you can boycott with me, it's because it's just the way it is. Like not everybody can do that. And also I don't really drink coffee anyway, so it's very easy for me to boycott like Starbucks and shit. So
yeah.
Yeah. You boycott Starbucks, then you get like Nescafe, but Nescafe is from Nestle, obviously. Then after that, okay, where do I go? A Coffee Bean, but they probably use like Nestle stuff as well. Then you go to the hawker center, you get a coffee, and then once again you're still using Nestle. It's very
like
difficult.
you can only get like one of those like organically sourced coffee beans and stuff, and they're usually very expensive, and not everybody can afford them.
Is that hand-picked cotton?
Oh my god!
Oh my god, I'm so horrified because like most of my wardrobe is Uniqlo.
But it also doesn't mean like everything the company does is evil as well. So, it's just like we're caught, right? We're trapped, and we're doing the best that we can. So we don't want to be hard on people who are also doing the best.
Yeah, do the best of your own ability. Yeah, that's enough, honestly. Yeah.
So that is the note that we leave you on, and thank you for listening to this episode of Soft Serve.
Bye.
Fuck Nestle. Bye.